They say the truth will set you free, but first, it might make you cough up glitter. I learned this when I discovered my husband's secret. Prescription hidden in my sister-in-law's orchidea. Lie wrapped in a capsule, concealed behind petals. He'd sworn he was done with the pills, so I helped him keep his promise. I didn't confront him. I didn't scream. I performed a quiet, sparkling alchemy, emptying the capsules and filling them with iridescent dust. I thought I was orchestrating a moment of humiliating honesty, a harmless prank to mirror his deception. I never imagined my glitter bomb would trigger a medical mystery, land us on the local news, and peel back layers of family secrets so dark they made his little white lie look pristine. The air in Bree's sunroom was a damp, perfumed blanket. It smelled of potting soil, orchid bark, and the cloying sweetness of guilt. I moved through it, watering can in hand, performing my weekly sisterly duty. My husband Mark called it bonding. I called it servitude with a side of passive-aggressive horticulture. Bree, Mark's older sister, was a monument to curated wellness, a lifestyle influencer with 10,000 followers who believed in crystal, moon cycles, and the toxic masculinity of processed sugar. Her home was a temple to aesthetic control, and I was its reluctant acolyte, tasked with keeping the greenery alive while she curated her perfect life online. Her pride was the orchid, a phalaenopsis she'd named Seraphina. It was a cascading spectacle of white blooms, a symbol of her nurturing purity. As I angled the spout to avoid crown rot, a flash of orange plastic caught my eye behind the ceramic pot. Not a leaf, not a tag. I set the can down. The gentle hum of the humidifier became a roar in my ears. I nudged the pot. There, tucked between the pot and a MAC cream hanger, was a small orange prescription bottle. My breath hitched. I knew that bottle. I'd held its twin in my own bathroom cabinet for 2 years. Lorazepam. 1 milligram. Take as needed for anxiety. Patient, Mark Devlin. The date on the label was from 3 months ago. The prescription was from Dr. Evans, Mark's therapist. The bottle was half full. A cold, clear understanding washed through me, sharp and surgical. Mark had told me he'd weaned off these pills 6 months ago. We'd celebrated. He'd said he was managing his anxiety with meditation and exercise. With Bree's guidance, he'd flushed the last few, he said right in front of me. But here they were, hidden, not in his gym bag, not in his car, in his sister's sunroom, behind the emblem of her holistic virtue, a sleeper pill, a secret kept in the one place I was guaranteed to be but never to look. My mind replayed the last few months in a new, sinister light. Mark's unexplained. Drowsiness on Tuesday nights after golf, the slight tremor in his hand he blamed. On too much coffee, the emotional distance I'd attributed to work stress, the way Bree would look at him with a knowing, almost possessive concern. Is Mark getting enough sleep, Lena? Is he managing his stress? The lie wasn't just his. It was theirs, a conspiracy of silence hidden behind Seraphine's pristine petals. I heard Bree's footsteps, the soft pad of her wool socks on the hardwood. I palmed the bottle, the plastic warm from the sun lamp. It felt like holding a live grenade. Lena? Everything vibrant in here? Her voice was honey over gravel. Everything's perfect, Bree, I called back, my voice miraculously steady. Seraphine's thriving. I finished the watering, the bottle a burning secret in my sweater pocket. The rest of the visit was a pantomime. Bree's lecture on the vibrational energy of jade plants, her offering of adaptogen-infused tea that tasted like dirt. I smiled and nodded, a ghost in a greenhouse. Back in my car, I stared at the bottle. I didn't want to throw it away. Destruction was too easy. I wanted translation. I wanted his secret to speak a language everyone could understand. An idea, petty and perfect, crystallized. I drove not home but to a craft store. In the glitter aisle, under the fluorescent lights, I found what I needed, a small vial of extra fine holographic glitter. It was the kind used in resin art, particles so small they could float in the air like fairy dust. In my own kitchen, with surgical precision, I twisted open each gelatin capsule. I emptied the fine white powder. A part of me wondered how much was placebo, how much was chemical crutch into a baggie which I sealed and hid. Then, using a tiny funnel, I filled each empty capsule with the glitter. I packed it tight. I reassembled them. To the eye, they were identical, perfect little bombs of shame. I returned to Breeze the next day, claiming I'd left my favorite weeding tool. The sunroom was empty. The bottle slid back into its hiding place. A soldier returned to its post. That night, Mark hugged me, smelling of sandalwood and deceit. "You okay, Lee? You seem quiet, just thinking about clarity." I murmured into his chest. "Clarity's good," he said, kissing my forehead. Purity of intention. If only he knew. I felt a twist of guilt, but it was smothered by a colder, harder satisfaction. The trap wasn't baited with poison, but with light. A truth so bright it couldn't be hidden. I just had to wait for him to swallow it. The waiting was a steady and silent observation. I watched Mark closely, looking for signs he'd visited the orchid, for the telltale anxiety that might drive him to his secret stash. But he was calm, affectionate even. The pills sat, a glittering time bomb. The detonation came on my birthday. Mark had been acting strangely all week, secretive phone calls, working late. I'd assumed it was birthday planning, a surprise. That morning he'd kissed me, his eyes avoiding mine. "Dinner at 7, Letta. Dress up. It's going to be special." By 8 p.m., I was in my little black dress, staring at a cold steak. His phone went straight to voicemail. At 8:30, my own phone rang. It was Bree, and her voice was a helix of panic and confusion. "Lena! Oh my God, you need to come to my house." "It is, Mark. Something's really wrong." My heart, which had been sinking into a cold pool of disappointment, now shot into my throat. What? What happened? Is he hurt? He's sparkling," she hissed, as if saying it too loud would make it more real. "He came over. He was agitated. Said he needed one of his old pills to calm down before your dinner. He went into the sunroom, took one, and now he's coughing. And every time he coughs, this glitter comes out. It's all over my sofa. He's trying to talk and it's shimmering on his lips." In the background, I heard a sound I'll never forget. My husband's wet, ragged cough followed by a high-pitched, bewildered shriek from Bree's neighbor Margot. "Call an ambulance. He's having a reaction. His insides are disco." A surreal calm settled over me. The plan had worked, but the scale was all wrong. This wasn't a private moment of shock. This was a public spectacle. "I'm on my way," I said, my voice flat. I arrived to a scene of surreal chaos. An ambulance and a fire truck were parked at odd angles. Lights strabing against Bree's perfectly manicured lawn. A small crowd of neighbors huddled on the sidewalk. And in the open doorway of Bree's minimalist home, backlit by the sterile living room lights, was my husband. Mark was seated on the bottom step of her staircase, a paramedic kneeling before him. He was shirtless, a blood pressure cuff on his arm, and he was unequivocally glittering. A fine, iridescent dust coated his chest, his shoulders, clung to his stubble. Every exhale produced a faint, sparkling cloud. He coughed again, a hacking spasm, and a puff of silver and pink glitter shot into the paramedic's flashlight beam. "Sir, try to breathe slowly." "What did you ingest?" the paramedic asked, her voice professional but edged with bewilderment. Just my anxiety pill, Mark wheezed, his eyes wide with terror. From months ago, it must have degraded? Bree stood to the side, clutching a cashmere throw to her chest, her face a mask of horror not just for Mark's condition, I realized, but for the contamination of her pristine world. Glitter was the ultimate pollutant, the antithesis of her clean living brand. I pushed through the crowd. I'm his wife. Mark looked at me, and in his glitter-dusted eyes, I saw sheer panic, but also a flicker of something as accusation. Did he know? Lena, I'm so sorry. Dinner, he rasped. Don't talk, I said, kneeling beside him. The glitter was even more shocking up close. It was in his eyelashes. The paramedics were baffled. They'd ruled out anaphylaxis. His vitals were stable, but the symptom was unprecedented. We need to take him in. This could be a toxic reaction or a pulmonary irritant. We need a chest x-ray, tox screen. As they loaded him onto the gurney, a local news van tipped off by the melodramatic disco insides, 911 KL pulled up. A reporter with a two-eager expression started filming the glitter-strewn paths from the door to the ambulance. Bree saw the camera and her influencer instincts warred with her panic. She smoothed her hair, then realized she was covered in a fine dust of glitter herself. She looked at me, truly looked at me, and for a split second, the mask of serene wisdom fell away. In its place was the cold, calculating fear of someone whose carefully constructed narrative was about to shatter. In that moment, I knew this wasn't about Mark's lie. The glitter had illuminated something else. Something in Bree's reaction was off. It wasn't just concern for her brother. It was the terror of exposure. At the hospital, in the glaring, antiseptic light of the farce turned into a forensic investigation. Doctors were fascinated and flummoxed. The glitter, under examination, was identified as non-toxic, but its presence in the bronchial passages was a medical curiosity. They ordered a full toxicology report on the contents of the pill bottle, which Bree had handed over in a Ziploc bag, her fingers trembling. While Mark was taken for scans, Bree pulled me into a sterile family room. The glitter on her sweater twinkled under the fluorescent lights. What happened, Lena? She asked, her voice low and sharp. Mark said those pills were old, from months ago, but glitter doesn't just appear. I met her gaze. Maybe they weren't what he thought they were? Her eyes widened imperceptibly. She looked away toward the window overlooking the parking lot. The news van was still there. This is a nightmare. My brand. This looks chaotic, unclean. Her priority was her brand, not her brother's lungs. The final piece clicked into place. Hours later, a weary-looking doctor found us. Mr. Devlin is stable. The glitter is, well, it's passing. But we have the preliminary tox report on the medication. He looked at his clipboard, then at us. The capsules contained microcrystalline cellulose and a small amount of magnesium stearate. Common fillers. There was no lorazepam, no active pharmaceutical ingredients at all. The world tilted. Placebos. Mark, propped up in a hospital bed, still faintly shimmering, stared blankly. What? The pills were dummies, the doctor said gently. Someone switched them. Possibly months ago. The room was silent except for the hum of the pump. I looked from Mark's confused, glitter-speckled face to Bree's. She had gone bone white. All the color, all the curated vitality had drained away. Bree? Mark whispered, the truth dawning slowly, painfully. You were refilling my prescriptions for me. After I said I wanted to stop, you said you'd handle it. Bree's mouth opened. but no sound came out. The wellness guru, the purveyor of natural healing, had been secretly medicating her brother with sugar pills, playing God with his mental health, keeping him dependent on her care, her solutions. Her holistic support had been a fraud. My glitter bomb hadn't exposed a husband's relapse. It had exposed a sister's benevolent tyranny. Mark looked at me, his eyes full of a new, profound hurt. "Did you know? I found the pills," I said, my voice quiet in the stark room. I just made them impossible to ignore. The consequences of that act would ripple far beyond the ER, unraveling the delicate, toxic web of control Bree had woven around my husband, and forcing us all to confront the lies we'd been swallowing for years. The hospital discharged Mark the next morning with instructions to let the glitter pass and follow. Up with his primary care physician, he moved through the world in a daze, a faint, shimmering aura clinging to him like the last remnants of a fever dream. Every time he coughed a dry, glitter-free hack now, we both flinched. Our house, once a haven, felt like a crime scene. The untouched birthday dinner still sat on the dining table. The candles melted into grotesque wax waterfalls. Mark avoided the room entirely. He sat on the edge of our bed, staring at his hands. The tremor was gone. "Placebos," he said, not for the first time. The word tasted like chalk. For months, she told me she was proud of my progress, that the meditation was working. All the while, she was keeping you on a leash, I finished, my voice softer than I felt. My own guilt was a silent, growing pressure behind my sternum. I had lit the fuse, but Bree had built the bomb. My phone buzzed incessantly. Friends, family, neighbors. The local news segment, titled "Mystery Malady, the Glitter Lung Case," had aired at 6 and 11. They deblurred Marcus' face, but Bree's minimalist living room, now forever associated with biomedical glitter, was clearly visible. The reporter had used phrases like bizarre medical event and possible prank gone wrong. They'd gotten a soundbite from a bewildered pulmonologist about foreign body aspiration. And then just before noon, the call came from Mark's firm, Henderson, Pierce & Colt, Corporate Law. Image was everything. Mark, his senior partner, Robert Colt, said, his voice strained through the speakerphone. "We've seen the news. We've received some calls. The partners feel it would be best if you took a leave of absence. Paid, of course, until this situation is fully resolved and no longer a distraction. A leave? The first step on a well-greased slide out the door." Mark's career, built on meticulous control and sober judgment, had been undermined by a cloud of holographic sparkles. He hung up, his face ashen. "Distraction," he repeated. My own work as a freelance graphic designer was less vulnerable, but the first email had already arrived from a client. "Lena, saw the crazy news. Hope your family is okay. Let's push the deadline for the brochure to next month, give you some space." It was kindness laced with professional distance. We were becoming pariahs, a circus act. The doorbell rang. It was Margot Bree's neighbor, holding a casserole dish with an expression of ghoulish concern. "I just wanted to check on you both and return this dish to Bree, but she's not answering her door. The police were there earlier, you know." "Police?" I asked, blocking the doorway. "Oh, yes, just to take a statement about the incident, but I heard from Dana across the street that they were asking about prescriptions. And a reporter from the Metro Herald is going door to door." She leaned in, lowering her voice. "Is it true Bree was giving him fake pills? There are rumors." The story was mutating, spreading faster than glitter on a breeze. I took the casserole dish and closed the door. That evening, Bree finally broke her silence. not with a call, but with a carefully crafted Instagram post. A soft focus photo of a single dewdrop-covered orchid bloom. The caption, "Sometimes the path to healing is messy. Sometimes our desire to help those we love comes from a place of deep worry, not perfect wisdom. I'm stepping back from content to focus on my family during this challenging time. Please respect our privacy as we navigate these personal waters. Hashtag family first, hashtag authentic journey, hashtag self-care." The comments were a flood of supportive emojis and messages like, "You're so brave," and "No one has the right to judge your heart." Her followers were defending her benevolent tyranny. She was reframing the narrative, casting herself as a flawed but loving caregiver, a victim of circumstance. Mark threw his phone across the room when he saw it. It hit the sofa with a soft thud. "She's gaslighting 10,000 people," a flash of the anger I hadn't seen in years. "She's making it about her journey." This, I realized, was Bree's true expertise, not wellness, but perception management. She was controlling the story even as it crumbled around her. 2 days later, Dr. Evans, Mark's therapist, called. He'd seen the news and received a concerning email from Bree, preemptively explaining her actions. She claims she was supplementing my therapy with natural, placebo-based support because she was worried the pharmaceuticals were masking the root cause. Mark relayed after the call, his voice hollow. "She told him she forgot to tell me about the switch, that it was an oversight in her zeal to help." "And he believes that?" I asked. "He's a therapist. He sees the best in people, but he's concerned for me and about the dynamic." Mark looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed. "He wants to see us together." And he suggested Bree might benefit from family therapy too, to understand the boundaries she crossed. Family therapy. The idea of sitting in a room with Bree, dissecting her control, felt both terrifying and necessary. I agreed. But first, we had to deal with the legal and professional fallout. Robert Colt called again. The firm's internal review, prompted by the unusual publicity, had uncovered a potential conflict of interest. A case Mark had worked on 6 months ago involved a pharmaceutical company. The opposing counsel was now suggesting, in not-so-subtle terms, that Mark's documented and publicized issues with prescription medication might have clouded his judgment. "It's a fishing expedition," Mark said, pouring a scotch at 3 in the afternoon. "A bad sign. But they're using the glitter, the news, everything. Bree's help is going to cost me my partnership track." I watched him drink, the glass trembling slightly. The placebo pills might have been fake, but the anxiety they were meant to treat was devastatingly real. And now turbocharged by public humiliation and career implosion. I needed to do something. Not more sabotage, but damage control and understanding. I started digging, not into Bree's present, but into her past. What created a woman who would secretly swap her brother's medication? I began with the things Mark had let slip over the years. Things he'd framed as quirky family lore. Their mother, Evelyn, had died when Mark was 10, Bree 15. A sudden aneurysm. Their father, Charles, a stoic engineer, had retreated into his work. Bree, I knew, had become the little mother. She'd packed lunches, helped with homework, tried to create order from the chaos of grief. I found Bree's old college yearbook online. She'd studied marketing, but her extracurricular was the peer counseling hotline. Photos showed a younger, softer Bree. Her smile not yet the perfect, calibrated curve of her influencer persona. I dug deeper into public records. Charles Devlin had died 5 years ago. Heart failure. The obituary was brief, praising his career and his devoted children. It listed a sister, Carol Devlin in Florida, an aunt we'd never met. On a whim, I searched Carol Devlin plus Florida. I found a Facebook profile, mostly private, but with a cover photo of a smiling, silver-haired woman with kind eyes standing in front of a community garden. I took a chance and sent a message, keeping it vague. Hi, I am Lena, Mark Devlin's wife. I'm researching family history and was hoping you might have a moment to chat sometime. To my surprise, she replied within an hour. Of course, dear. I haven't heard from Mark or Bree in years. Is everything all right? We scheduled a video call for the next day. While I was playing amateur detective, the wider world was not idle. An article appeared in the Metro Herald's lifestyle section, titled "The Dark Side of Wellness Influencing." It didn't name names, but it talked about the pressure to present a perfect life in the ethical lines crossed when personal care becomes public performance. It cited a recent high-profile local incident involving a family member and substitutive medication. Bree's brand sponsors a line of clean skincare and a meditation app, quietly pulled their affiliate links from her bio. Her perfectly constructed world was developing cracks, and I had a feeling my glitter was still stuck in the gears. Carol Devlin's face filled my laptop screen. She had the same intelligent eyes as Mark, but none of the tension that usually pinched his features. It's so lovely to meet you, Lena, she said, her voice warm. Though I have to say, your message worried me. Researching family history often means something's wrong. I decided on a modified version of the truth. There have been some difficulties. With Bria, it's brought up a lot of past family dynamics, and Mark is struggling. I thought understanding the past might help him. Carol's expression softened with sympathy. Oh, that poor boy. And Bree, I'm not surprised, to be honest, she sighed. After Evelyn died, it was a perfect storm. Charles was a good man, but emotionally unavailable. He showed love by providing, by solving practical problems. Grief was not a problem he could fix. Bree stepped into that void. She was just a child herself, but she became the emotional manager for the household. She described a teenage Bree who was fiercely protective of Mark, but also controlling. She'd choose his clothes, screen his friends, speak for him at parent-teacher conferences. It came from love, I believe that, but it was also a way for her to manage her own overwhelming anxiety. If she could control her little brother's world, she could create the illusion of controlling the chaos that took her mother. And their father allowed this? I asked. Charles saw it as helpful. Bree was so mature for her age. He didn't see the cost. When Mark went to college, Bree had a kind of breakdown. Her purpose was gone. She drifted for a while, then found. All that, Carol waved a hand vaguely, encompassing Bree's influencer persona. Another system of control, curating a perfect life online. And when Mark moved back after law school, and especially after he started having his own struggles with anxiety, well, I think for Bree, it was like her purpose returned. She could be his savior again. The pieces were falling into a tragic picture. Bree wasn't a monster. She was a traumatized girl who'd never learned healthy boundaries, who'd built an identity around being needed. Her wellness brand was an extension of that, offering control to her followers the way she'd always tried to offer. To her brother, did you ever try to intervene? I asked gently. I lived far away, and Charles didn't welcome criticism of his children. By the time he died, the pattern was set in stone. I sent cards, called on birthdays, but Bree, she kept her distance. I think I represented a part of the family she couldn't control, a reminder of a time before she was in charge. Carol leaned closer to the screen. How is Mark, really? He's lost, betrayed. His career is in jeopardy because of the publicity. The glitter, Carol's lips twitched, not with humor, but with a sad recognition. A rather flamboyant cry for help, wasn't it? My cheeks burned. It was mine. The glitter. I found the pills, and I switched them. Carol was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I see. Well, you certainly got everyone's attention. She didn't sound judgmental, merely observant. The Devlins are experts at quiet suffering. You, my dear, made it impossible to ignore. That might be exactly what they need. Her words offered a sliver of absolution I hadn't known I needed. After the call, I told Mark everything. About my research, about the call with Carol. He listened, staring at the wall. She needed me to be broken so she could fix me, he said finally, his voice thick. All my life. And I let her because it was easier than fighting. And because after Mom died, her needing me was the only thing that made me feel safe. Like I wouldn't lose her too. It was the most profound insight he'd ever voiced about their relationship. The victim was complicit in his own captivity. It didn't excuse Bree's actions, but it framed them in a heartbreaking new light. The doorbell rang again. This time, it was a process server. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a cease and desist letter from a law firm representing Bree. It alleged that I had intentionally tampered with medication, causing bodily harm and extreme emotional distress to Mark, and orchestrated a malicious defamation campaign against Bree via the glitter incident. It demanded I issue a public statement absolving Bree of any wrongdoing, retract any false statements I'd made, none publicly, and pay damages for the harm to her professional reputation. She wasn't retreating. She was lawyering up. The benevolent wellness guru was gone. In her place was a cornered animal, lashing out with legal threats. I showed the letter to Mark. He read it, his face hardening into an expression I'd only seen him use in court. No, he said, the word flat and final. This ends now. He went to his study, the one room in the house Bree had never been allowed to decorate. He emerged an hour later with the draft of his own letter, not from a lawyer, from him. Bree, your cease and desist is noted. If you wish to pursue legal action against my wife for exposing the fact that you secretly swapped my prescribed medication with placebos, please proceed. I will be the primary witness for the defense. Furthermore, I will be filing a complaint with the state medical board regarding the unauthorized manipulation of prescription drugs and providing my therapist with a full account of your conduct for his ethical review. The choice is yours. Drop this, and we can discuss the possibility of family therapy in the future, or escalate. And I will use every tool at my disposal to defend my wife and myself from your manipulation. The days of you managing my life are over. He showed it to me. It was brutal. Necessary. Send it, I said. He hit send. The war for Mark's autonomy had entered a new, decisive phase. Bree's response to Mark's email was not immediate. The silence that followed was heavier, more charged than the previous flurry of chaos. It was the quiet of a drawn breath before a scream. In that silence, Mark began to change. The passivity that had defined him in relation to his sister began to slough off. He stopped drinking scotch in the afternoon. He started running again, pounding out his anger on the pavement at dawn. He contacted an employment lawyer about the firm's leave of absence. He also made an appointment with a new psychiatrist, one unconnected to Dr. Evans or Bree's world. I need a real assessment, he told me. I need to know what my baseline actually is without her interference. It was the first truly independent health decision he'd made in years. I felt a surge of pride so fierce it brought tears to my eyes. My own project continued. With Carol's permission, I reached out to a few of Bree's old college acquaintances. The picture that emerged was consistent. Bree was remembered as intense, a caretaker, always the one in charge. One woman, now a social worker, said over coffee. She ran the hotline like a general. She had this. Need to have the answer for everyone. It was exhausting to watch, honestly. I always wondered what would happen to her if no one needed saving. Meanwhile, the court of public opinion was slowly turning. A few gossip blogs had picked up the wellness influencer versus family angle. Comments on Bree's last post became more mixed. Loving someone doesn't mean controlling their meds, one wrote. This isn't hashtag family first, it's hashtag control first, double quotes, comma. Then, the Metro Herald published a follow-up piece. This one was in the news section, not lifestyle. The headline questions raised about placebo therapy. Following local incident, it cited ethical guidelines for therapists and discussed the dangers of non-consensual treatment. It quoted an anonymous family member, Carol, I was sure, describing the long-standing pattern of enmeshment. Bree's name wasn't used. But the description of a local wellness influencer with a significant online following was a thin veil. Her remaining sponsor, a yoga wear company, publicly cut ties. 5 days after Mark's email, Bree finally replied. It was a single line, family therapy, Dr. Evans's office, Thursday, 4 p.m. She had chosen surrender or strategic retreat. Dr. Evans's office was a calm, neutral space of beige carpets and abstract art. Bree arrived first. She looked smaller somehow. Stripped of her usual armor of elegant layers and statement jewelry, she wore a simple gray sweater and jeans. She didn't look at me. Mark and I sat on one small sofa. Bree on a chair opposite. Dr. Evans, a gentleman in his 50s, took his seat in a rolling chair between us. Thank you all for coming, he began. This is a space for listening and understanding, not for blame. Bree, Mark has shared his feelings of betrayal regarding the medication. Would you like to share your perspective? Bree clasped her hands tightly in her lap. Her knuckles were white. I was trying to help, she said, her voice tight. The pharmaceuticals were a crutch. They were preventing him from doing the real work. I saw how they doled him. I wanted my brother back, the bright, funny boy he was before. Her eyes flicked to Mark, pleading, before the anxiety swallowed him. So you decided to secretly replace his prescribed medication with placebos, Dr. Evans said, his tone neutral. I was monitoring him. I was there every day. If he'd had a real crisis, I would have gotten him real help immediately. You appointed yourself his doctor, his pharmacist, and his guardian, Mark said, his voice low but steady, without my consent. You made me a puppet breed, and you lied to me. For months, I was protecting you. The words burst from her, sharp with a frustration that felt decades old. From Dad's indifference, from the world that wanted to chew you up. Who held you when you cried for Mom? Who made sure you ate? Who fought your battles? Me. I have always protected you. There it was, the core of the tragedy. Her entire identity, her sense of worth, was built on being Mark's protector. His growing independence, his marriage, his attempt to manage his own health, they weren't just changes. They were an existential threat to her. I'm not 10 years old anymore, Bree, Mark said, a crack in his voice. I needed a sister, not a warden. You protecting me has felt like suffocation for 20 years. And the pills, that wasn't protection. That was you needing me to be sick so you could feel well. Bree recoiled as if slapped. The truth of it hung in the quiet room. Dr. Evans intervened gently. Bree, your love for Mark is not in question. The actions you took, however, were profoundly disrespectful of his autonomy and dangerous. You cannot control another person's health, even with good intentions. Mark, your anger is valid. The betrayal is real. He turned to me. Lena, you are part of this system now. What is your perspective? All eyes turned to me. I took a breath. I found the pills and I reacted poorly. I wanted to expose the lie in a way that couldn't be ignored. I didn't foresee the medical scare or the publicity. For that, I'm sorry, Mark. I looked directly at him and he gave a small nod. But Bree, you created the lie. You hid it in my face in a place you knew I'd be every week. You were betraying him and you were disrespecting me, our marriage, and our home. You treated me like the hired help and him like a child. We're not characters in your wellness narrative. Bree stared at the floor, tears finally spilling over. They made clean tracks through the faint, almost invisible layer of glitter dust that still seemed to haunt us all. I didn't know how to stop, she whispered, the facade finally gone, revealing the terrified, grieving girl underneath. It's all I know how to do. The session ended with an agreement, no legal action. Bree would write a formal apology to Mark and to me. We would continue family therapy, but Mark and I would also pursue our own couples counseling, and Bree would begin individual therapy too. Address her control issues and the unresolved grief from her mother's death. It was a start, but as we left the office, walking separately to our cars, the chasm between us felt as wide as ever. Understanding was not the same as forgiveness. The fallout continued in slow motion. Mark's firm, after negotiations from his employment lawyer, agreed to bring him back from leave in a month. With a clear plan to review the conflict issue, his new psychiatrist diagnosed him with generalized anxiety disorder and recommended a combination of cognitive behavioral therapy and a consensual, carefully monitored low-dose SSRI, a path he chose for himself. My client quietly reinstated the original deadline. The world was moving on, leaving us to pick up the glitter-strewn pieces. Bree's formal apology arrived via email. It was stiff, legalistic, but it contained the necessary words. I was wrong. I violated your trust. I am deeply sorry. She announced an indefinite hiatus from social media to focus on her personal healing journey. Her online empire, built on the illusion of control, went dark. One evening, Mark found me looking at the vial of leftover glitter on my craft shelf. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking I used a weapon when I should have used a word," I said. I was so focused on the gotcha that I didn't think about the what next. He came and stood beside me, taking the vial. The holographic flakes caught the light. "It was a pretty spectacular gotcha," he said, a ghost of a smile on his lips for the first time in weeks. And the what next? Maybe it had to be this hard. Maybe a word wouldn't have broken the spell. It took a shock, a sparkly, embarrassing, public shock. He put the vial back on the shelf. "Don't get rid of it. It's part of our history now. The great glitter bomb. The day my wife declared war on my dysfunctional family and accidentally saved me from it." He kissed me then, a real kiss, not the perfunctory peck of the last few months. It tasted like forgiveness and a fragile, hopeful future. Epilogue. 6 months later. The article in The Atlantic was titled "The Placebo Effect. When Care Becomes Control." It was a serious, researched piece about the ethics of non-consensual intervention in mental health. It mentioned in a single anonymized paragraph a notable case in the Midwest that helped spark the debate. Mark read it over my shoulder. We're a footnote in medical ethics, he said, amused. He was back at work, his partnership track still rocky but alive. We were in couples counseling. It was hard, unglamorous work. We were learning to talk instead of assume, to trust instead of spy. Bree was living in a small apartment across town. She'd sold her minimalist house to many memories, too much glitter in the grout. She was seeing her own therapist, working a regular job at a nonprofit garden center. She'd sent us a photo last week, her hands, soil-stained and real, holding a seedling. No filter, no caption. It was the most authentic communication we'd had from her in years. I was in her new apartment helping her unpack books. The silence between us was no longer hostile, just careful. She handed me a thick volume on horticulture. "I'm sorry, Lena," she said suddenly, not looking at me, "for treating you like an accessory. You love him, really love him, not as a project." "I know," I said, "and I'm sorry I turned your orchid into a crime scene." A small, genuine laugh escaped her. It was a strange, wonderful sound. "Serafina survived, you know. She's putting out a new spike." Later, as I drove home, I thought about the glitter. It was still out there, in the world. Microscopic bit of it, probably in Mark's lungs. In Bree's old carpet fighters, on the goats of the paramedics. You could never truly clean it up. It was a permanent, if invisible, record of the explosion. But sometimes an explosion is necessary to clear rotten foundations. Our family had been built on a fault line of grief and control. The glitter bomb was the earthquake. What we built in the aftermath, with Sarapila with boundaries, with honest words instead of hidden pills, was still under construction. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't Instagram ready, but it was ours. And it was real. I pulled into my driveway, our driveway, and saw Mark through the window making dinner. He waved, a simple, ordinary gesture. I waved back. The truth had, indeed, set us free. But first, it made us cough up glitter, fight in therapy, and rebuild from the shimmering, messy ground up.